now.
Good work, Janie. It's exactly 7 o'clock. Welcome one and all. And everyone's assembled for our financial work session. And I will kick it off to, I guess, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. First, I just want to start. Do you have any general questions from our last session that we maybe did not answer that we want to get started with first? Okay. If not, let's assume everyone has the packet of materials either on the screen or Janie, you'll pull them up. So if we go to page 29 and page 30, which are significant budget cuts. And we'll review the changes that have occurred since the last time we were together. And they are very minimal. You'll note on page 29 in front of you now that tourism came back with some additional cuts in their budget. Very helpful to all three of our local entities, Rockbridge County, City of Buena Vista, and of course us. I don't know if Dennis wants to fill us in a little bit on that board meeting this morning, if it's appropriate now or not, but
I'm happy.
there was a lot of discussion there and it worked out again, I think, very well for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that now, or if you want to wait until the regular meeting, I can talk about it then, whatever makes sense to you guys. But I actually maybe now, because there is an issue that I want to point out. So anyway, the board met and we looked at our budget. We tried to figure out how we could best support the localities, and we came up with a plan for the next 5 quarters to give 20% refunds to the localities for the next 3 quarters, and then the last 2 quarters of fiscal year 21, a 15% refund. And that for the city works out to roughly $65,000. For tourism, it's a $180,000 hit, but we think we can do it. But in order to do that, we had to eliminate our jurisdictional marketing grant program. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because Main Street Lexington and I were both hoping to use those funds for the marketing grant program to reimburse Main Street Lexington for the highway signs, which is a $4,400 expense. So that marketing program is going away, so tourism won't be able to do that. So my hope is that we can earmark $4,400 from the savings that tourism is providing to Lexington this year to Main Street Lexington to reimburse them for money that she's already outlaid in anticipation of that. We figured it was better to have the money at the localities' discretion rather than within tourism. If we had kept it within tourism and held on to the marketing program, that would have been a $15,000 expense. It would be $5,000 for each jurisdiction. So it made better sense to push it down to the jurisdictions and let Lexington pay that fund. So that's how we did that. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about that.
And to that issue, if we turn to page 28.
Jim, before you go forward, can I make a comment? This is Gary. Those savings that you just looked at for tourism, those are just for the 4 quarters of fiscal year 21, and it is net of that marketing grant that Dennis just spoke about. It's net of that 4,400. Thank you.
Well, that's what I was going to mention, Gary. If we look on page 28 of the different budgetary savings, we'll see at the bottom line is tourism, 9794, which is a reduction in the regional tourism contribution for the current fiscal year, less the
Main Street
adjustment, anticipating that our recommendation to you in the budget. Now back to page 30, please.
On that, I did see it. We will cover it for Main Street.
It would have been reimbursed, the $400 bill funds from our April, and they've eliminated the thing both for fiscal year 20. Won't be able to reimburse her in April. So it is my biggest concern for what they've already outlaid. Now, whether Lexington wants to do in fiscal year 21, if we consider that funds, but that's for about the outlay that Main Street Lexington has already.
And that's fine, but since we're doing the budget, I think we should look.
I think they did. I think you guys, Jim, and in the fourth quarter, Jim, and
I did not have it included in FY21, Gary.
Of the 50,000, 4,400, but we
okay.
did not have 4,400 for the current fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
But there's probably, Jim, enough savings other than those savings that we identify for current year that we probably can scrap together $4,400.
Sure. Okay. Looking at the significant budget changes on page 30, I believe it is now. The center set of numbers, you'll see the total expense cut is 998. Below that, made available to contingency is 43,000. And then total expense modifications are 955. What that is telling you is that in the budget that we are now recommending, we've cut expenses by $955,000. However, we've also allowed $43,000 to accumulate in that contingency line in case we needed it for some small expenses during the fiscal year. So the total expenses that have been cut in this budget is really the $998,000 figure, because we have not assigned that contingency to anything. It could drop down to the bottom line of total expense modifications. We left it in and just chose to leave it in case some small expenses come up through the year, or a department says, hey, I missed something and I need a few $1,000s, so it's there. It can be drawn on as contingency, or it can be put into that bottom line of savings, but the total is still $998,000 that have been cut from the budget. So, any questions on that? Okay, if you drop down below that to the numbers below that, you'll see the options not recommended and some additions there. Near the bottom, they're highlighted. Eliminate the discretionary agency funding could be a potential option. Also, to keep the police chief position vacant for the full fiscal year could be a potential option as well. And you can see what those two numbers generate. And in addition to what we had there at the last time we were together, the total then would be $383,434. And other options that are not included in the budget cuts at this point, but potentially as we go down the road, they're there for consideration.
Can I ask a question about the police chief search? How long, I mean, is it most likely going to take 6 months regardless on that?
I would say so at this time, yes, absolutely. I mean, frankly, none of us could focus in the next month or two anyway on it with this budget and COVID-19 and any number of other things. And, you know, I'm not sure in this environment if it would be wise to try and fill a position, be willing to move from their current positions, or good law enforcement personnel in current communities, I would think, the majority of them.
They see some savings from that, Kate, for that cut.
Correct. Some portion of it would carry over to next fiscal year.
Are we paying Mark a stipend?
Yes, we are.
But we've been,
That's the number, I guess.
The way we calculated that number, what you're actually paying up, I made the assumption that if we were to pay him what we had budgeted, police chief, then we had 2 months savings factored in proposal. We took 10 current position costs are for, so this is 10/12 of the.
okay.
Conservative estimate of actually the savings in all likelihood. Okay. Other questions for discussion purposes? I think if you explore, we may need them, at least for discussion purposes.
But the agency funding is still, so we're first page there at 10%, correct? That's still ended cut.
Recommended to you now contains a 10%.
Mhm.
And the option that we saw, if we want to exercise another option when we face other rounds,
Right.
cut them 100%.
Okay.
And on the
Go ahead.
so we've already applied for the grant. Is there any way we can hold Mary, say we don't want to make a decision or a strike like?
I would not say definitively to do that, but my belief is that another community may pick it up. But in this, in any community, so it, potentially we could. In the past is once you turn it down, it goes to another community.
Subject. I did meet with Rebecca Walters for a while to discuss that very issue, and for the time being, best to an SRO for the next, contingent upon getting that grant for the record.
If I may, expenses in areas where we could cut, because if we're not comfortable with, and at what point do we to the community to evaluate conservatively, and because that will expenses. And when I think about that, the fall, your guess is as good as mine, and scared. And when I think about pairings and home football games, you don't know, I don't know. We have no idea if we'll have an extra 3,500 residents living within the city limits. We have no idea. And so I wonder if all of our projections for revenue, when their projections are 30% declines in each category, sales tax could be 10%. It concerns if the rest of council is comfortable and just believes for VMI and W&L and homecoming schools will have 5 home football games and people are going to be then so be it. But if we're not, we need to tinker with the revenue projections because that'll lead our expenses.
I hear you, David, but I'm not sure. I was comfortable that VML was probably the Virginia's first cities was like that. I agree with you. It may be worse than that, and maybe we have to come back and make some additional cut to the bone now. And things do. I don't know. I don't. I guess I'm comfortable with the VFC projections.
Does their projections and their formulas drill down to the fact of it revolves around institutions of general economies opening up. I don't know if it's that level of detail. And since we're than they do about our own city and some of the thought of being very concerned to revenue tie a lot of their some of these expenses, we could say we can open the spigots a little bit, but until we know the fingers for it to look like to be only projecting a sales tax.
To that, please. I think you take a conservative approach, which what Dennis said, I think is going to come in July 1. We have to cut programs and assume that that's approach. Why cause that damage when we could start cutting November 1st? It turn out to be bad months. Because at this point in time, it's difficult to put those services back in place. We're going to lose operational capabilities that we can't replace.
You'll note that I didn't say cut staff.
There's nothing left.
It's David speaking, but percent raise is still correct in January 2021.
That's
example. That's one item liability that we don't know. Your city staff and the city manager advocated hard, 0% raise. And now put it in the budget when parents' weekends occur, and us know. I would rather almost slide that money to unprogrammed or contingency, if you will. And if COVID-19 has subsided and universities are open and parents' weekends are occurring, then we can program. We can allocate those funds.
Well, of course, since it is in place only for in fact, in that case, have the opportunity to look at performance and revenues.
When we look at our counterparts proposing the largest salary increase, when some economists are we in step with other small cities and counties proposing 3?
Of course, we are not. And I will say that in the last couple of days, and Gary and Jake and I had asked about putting in only 2% for any number of reasons. An option that's on the table, we can make you any time along with those other options, but I want us to choose a conservative, determine what you think the revenues will be, then that's valuable at this point in time to be conservative. Maybe we can look at those figures a little bit, but to say it'll be 30%, county has apparently done wonderful that in any of the models that we've come up, and things are changing even from a week and a half or two ago. It is getting a little long-term decline or longer term. We're optimistic with the revenues, but data or information to make a decision, revenue calculation.
Perhaps to David's point about going into effect in January for the maybe a case sort of a heads up that have the revenue, we compensation increases if with those, but if it's gloom and doom on the other and recklessness as far as projecting, we're in such a state of flux as Jim just it's hard to point the ship to erring on the side of caution possible. I think we're all facing some to go into effect somehow if we don't have a shortfall greater than expected, that the go into effect in January may not be possible.
Funding the theater at Limekiln and Fine Arts and
They are at 100% of arts grant, dollar for dollar, in my opinion. If we can bring $1 spend, that's a pretty good investment, even in today's extra dollars.
I wonder if dollars spent on for folks that might rely that reach out to people in need, like an extra $1 to RARA is better than a one for one, potentially. And again, no disrespect at all. Agencies are valuable, but I just have a hard time cutting RARA or some of our percent and then funding that maybe don't have their programs, might not be able to provide.
I somewhat agree with what David's saying. I'm not worried at this point about that we're gonna be able to do. I don't know, that's fine with me. I have an issue with that SRO. If we can push it off till January, making a decision, I'd be okay with that and leaving it in. But to do that this summer, I don't think we can. And I think we probably should, again, on what happens by October, come then.
Leslie, about the SRO position, points out fiscal year 22 is this year. It's going to be a bigger expense that we can put off the decision on. So I mean, rather than taking away the pay raise, I'd rather maybe put a hold on the SRO, even though we're going to lose matching funds. To me, that would be my. As far as the outside agencies, I would say that their budgets the same way we do. So we're talking about $54,000. I don't think that that's. I don't think that to us that we should be to those funds because it is a big deal to them, I guess. So that I would give them a hard figure, whether it's 10% or whatever, and plan accordingly.
This is a give and take, and so different from our prior years with $1 million that nature that we've experienced. So it is very healthy. Of course, Jim consider and David's points and other how we may want to look at this. We're still in that process. Sure, we're looking at it from all angles. Whether it's Jim or David else. Jim Regenbald is available to have, and I feel certain he would drill down into our more like 20%, not 10%, or are, because he gave us, if I recall, that's one action, unless somebody on council or David calling, find out what his numbers are for, guide us on, are we on to with expectations? And then part of figuring out, what we evaluate and economics to the community. There are lots of other things going on, like the Community Foundation, aware that several people who are making it really, I think, may be robust, going to be pretty substantial as well. And again, break them, I don't think so. But where we spend our volumes of what we're about, and for the health and well-being of our citizens and cornerstones of our existence.
I think I think Jim Reginbald did forecasting, but I don't think anybody can tell us. And there's too many unknowns. That's why I just think we also need to keep in mind we're going to have to reevaluate. Definitely by October.
Well, one thing my recollection was, you're making the assumption that there is 0 July, August, and September. That's a quarter. If that gets disseminated for the entire year or those 3 months, we don't know how long this is going to last, if you will, house arrest until September window anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have to keep our hands, the best resource that available to us. There may be some others, but certainly when he could give us some good numbers. Exercise I can't help but think is, if Jim says you should do 20% on meals and lodging, you're looking more at 30 neck of the woods because of the makeup of our community. It'd be nice to know, the next week, to be able to get $1 million or $1.3 million, we're looking at our whole. And again, knowing that, do we hope that it's a mild or a short U recovery? Do we rework our budget and do have layoffs and reorganize our city?
Through the work session, it's been great conversation, but I do have I want to share. So if we could do that, and perhaps, again, you'll see that we have an additional savings of above the expenses, or excuse me, above that we projected we're losing this year. Is that money, one, we can track that by 21 fiscal year they face. So that would be available that we saw on page 29, or those other options. If you looked at this saving, $181,000 plus the $3,000 and the options that are available, council hasn't decided which ones, if any of those, to cut. The total of those three numbers is an additional $7 available to soften the blow, perhaps weaker revenues than we anticipate at it. Looking at what happens when the state acts, we would have $708,000 available to look at what those state cuts might be to us. And if we turn to now, please. One, two, three, four. Support. The total state support we receive is $705. That's both. So if we received a 10% cut in state, $8,000 that is available, could have. I just point that out, that we do have some flexibility yet to deal with other cuts in revenue or soft revenue. Not dismissing the fact that, yes, I'll talk to Jim Regibald. Yes, we'll relook at those revenues and maybe get a little more conservative. But we've put together a pretty good package of cuts already of almost $1 million, $998,000, plus this additional $700,000 that's available should we have to other sources of revenue. So we've done so far without touching, with no tax increase.
So this budget count, what the governor has already signaled he's cutting. The school raises are still in there, even though they think, okay.
Correct. Give me any information. The governor, and we do need to have another work session first week of May when we have our next council meeting. Waiting out what the General Assembly has done, and with that additional information tonight, then we can start dealing with what is known at that point. Doom and doom, I think we've proposed other U.S. City Council to discuss, and that gives us about flexibility to absorb some of that, what might come next. If we find in July, August, yes, we can adjust the budget at that time too, and say revenues we haven't recovered, the crowds aren't there, students aren't there, so we've got to make more cuts. We're pretty well positioned at this point. Our discussion based on that additional information, or
Sorry, I just wanted to get back to this. We hire that person pretty soon, right?
Day to even say, let's cut that. It felt like we could leave it another week or two.
Okay, because it's not recommended. I mean, the other ones, if we had to, disaster, we could later eliminate, determine what to do about the pay increase. But the other, and for that would be the one that I would, but that's the one that I feel like maybe we need to do.
I think if we can wait to fill that, if it's a possibility, to January as was suggested, and contingent upon the grant funding, I guess that's implied, to go ahead with opportunity if that how that position can function and what it's only a 1-year commitment, as the opportunity from that person and learn what's useful, what isn't useful, can be carried on through later years if possible. And that was sort of my takeaway from my meeting with. It's a valuable opportunity. I think so as it's traditionally structured is we need to learn and observe what is helpful, is worthwhile.
This or delay commitment from the police department work that they've been offering already?
No reductions from the police department, so perform and provide all the duties and activities.
Okay.
Jim, could take us back to the optional fund summary.
It's a good idea.
Did you have
And I
some?
guess, to me, keeping the police easy enough to do. It puts some stress with Mark. I've spoken with, it's something that they prefer not to do. We don't cut other resources if they can position. I would guess in my level, it's important is probably positions and programs that we already have in place to lose any of the things we're looking at on this list. You know, after that, question for council, I guess, reflects the values of the community. Do we want to cut it? Want to cut all of the pay raise and say stretch maybe of difficult performance that we don't want to invest in you? It's a message of sorts. It talks about our value. Funding is the same way, of course. I don't disagree. At some point is that, again, we've provided $700,000 worth of additional funds that, when do we call on the reserves? How much we have that are available in reserve and above what is required for us to maintain?
Action is that our fund balance as of the end of 2019, a bit more than 5 million unassigned fund balance, and what the frequent operating expense. I believe it's $1 million extra.
So my point is, find a way to 100,000 out of the cuts that are available. We don't want to cut agencies. Maybe 2 or 3 couple of years out of fund balance isn't, and we've got the money there. At some point, I'm not pushing that. You've seen I put a lot, we make in our leadership team, all of our local and regional coming to the table and making this work. Lose something as a community if we made all the cuts that before us. When would we invest in 5 million plus in excess fund balance? The investments we've made in past years onto that investment. To me, that's a question that myself included, but sometimes we have to look how much, as opposed to David, how pessimistically, how much of our should we invest, because we want to keep majority of those things that we've created.
Respectfully, I mean, you can maybe call me, I might be being realistic. And so, I think what our city is going through, and a lot of businesses are going through, they are able to afford right now. And we absolutely call a work session, I think it was maybe less than 2 months ago, and we received strong guidance during that. Look at it as available over 5 years, and we've talked about the fund balance. Don't look at it with wide eyes. It shouldn't be. I mean, that's drilled in. That's the message that I've received. We're hearing something different. I believe it's for expenditures is what I do believe. Take the approach of living within our means, much like a lot of our business owners do, and families. Appreciate the guidance, and you'll be able to reforecast things during the fall of everything. But right now, if you were to ask if the next fiscal decrease of 10%, I think they would all take that right now. And right now, we're projecting that, because we're projecting that sales tax will only go down 10%. And I think a lot of business owners are expecting that their sales might be off more than 10% in the next 12 months. And so that's all. I apologize if I'm being pessimistic, but I think I'm being realistic.
Okay.
And I feel that we owe that to our citizens who are staring down tax bills in June, staring down tax bills in December. And, you know, you look at some of the surrounding counties and they've wiped away personal property taxes for the next year, Nelson County, you know, and so I just, you know, I want to do what's fair and right. And I always have to our employees. I think back to last year, but you know, I hope, I apologize for being pessimistic. That's not my intent.
And I didn't mean it at a personal level. I meant as we look at our future, do we look at it with some optimism and invest in the future, or do we pull back and say we cannot afford to invest? If we didn't have the fund balance, I wouldn't even be mentioning this at all. But again, that's why, in my view, we do have a fund balance is for these rainy days. And if we used it once every 20 years, I think we're being very realistic and very practical as we treat our community.
And when I think about property, I think about the fund balance for the bridges that we're putting off in capital, you know, capital infrastructure. And those are one-time items that the fund balance we must pay for. So that's all.
I heard that there's a very good, and maybe Leslie, you might have more, that Washington and Lee and the colleges.
Welcome, Doug.
I have to say, I wish it would be 10%. Quite concerned that projections right now in the revenue for all those, the sales tax and possibly the meals and lodging tax are going to take more. If this is the case, that will not be so. And I've been hearing, you know, other people, other sources. So
Well, we certainly can't work on rumors. I had heard VMI that General P had suggested that they were planning for cadets not coming, and I can't imagine a virtual rat line next year.
no.
But I never would have expected the situation that we find ourselves in.
Mhm.
We've got about 10 minutes before our regular meeting's supposed to start, and you know, this whole process is challenging, and I think it's important for everyone in observations rooted in strategy and come with recommendations. You know, David, 10%'s not the right number. Welcome your recommendation. If somebody could tell us when this situation was going to be over, we can make better in the twilight come to a conclusion. And we can only agreement of what numbers we're comfortable. Well, we're not comfortable with any of the numbers. So, and it isn't just our community around the entire country. It adds its own challenges. Sharing your pessimism for the predict that once we have this behind us, that desirable than it was. We'll have more people and coming to the Horse Center. Instruction that we're experiencing right now, people unemployed, really incalculable.
Gary, quick question. What's the percentage, the 900, whatever that number is, what's the percent reduction is that of the total budget?
Well, Gary,
Those savings are general fund originally was a little bit over 19 million, and about 19 million, or just north of 5%. Not 6%, but more than 5%.
You know, that's not really a whole lot. I'm just, I think we need to be percent, but that's just my opinion. So,
questions or feelings on SRO, other recommendations that have been made? I'll just make the observation as an investment at the worst possible time in container recycling, there's virtually zero market point. And it's a proposition. I don't think that have a recycling program going forward. We may still need to tweak, or what you all think that should look like going forward.
I want to start a whole new topic when we're trying to wrap up, but I did, from what I saw on our website, we're looking to, so if we want to pare down that program, maybe having the dumpsters at Public Works reset, because I'm sure there is no plastics mark, oil what it is, but this is a bad time to do that. Take a little break when it makes sense again.
the point of looking at additional cuts, let us look, maybe we'll use that 10% to see what we would need to do back to you at our next meeting, again, which is a Tuesday, unless you choose another date. That gives us about a week and a half after the session on the 22nd. And hope to take into account that evening changes till we can get on May 7th and adopt the budget.
That looks like.
Yeah.
If there are no objections to that, why don't we take a 5-minute break? I've got 7:55 up, or stretch your legs, or Chuck.
Our staff and Jake, sorry, all your work.
Indeed.
Get her out.
Yeah, not easy.
And I anticipate they will meeting. Welcome to, but stay. But if you want to go on with your evening, I think that should be fine.
Did you brief on the popular annual financial report? EMI folks aren't joining us.
If you're not, that'd be fine. You can join us, and if you'd like.
For that part of the meeting, then I'll drop off. Thank you.
If there are no other comments or questions, take it back up at 8 o'clock. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the appointed hour of 8 o'clock on Thursday, April 16th. Welcome to the Lexington City Council meeting. And thank you all for being here. And a challenge to Janie, and if you will join me, the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, indivisible.
I had my backdrop, I think, but the approval of the agenda, as presented. Matter of just checking, take that as a no.
I do see them or not.
Right.
Is it the News Gazette or?
Sure.
Okay.
Who's joined us? Or you can stay muted. Okay. Going to jump on Gary. Our cadets are not popular.
Y'all's screen is showing up better than mine. Seeing writing over top of popular annual figure and not everybody else's. Again, Xing, BMI, Captain David Singar, Simon Grofhammer, this document, and then on in fiscal year highlights some of the numbers out. What's consolidated annual financial report in the. So we're very indebted to this team of 2 cadets at the city to produce this document. And said, just with we posted on the city's website, PAFRA report, Councilman Strong's. She noted that on the last page where it talked about the city's general, the number and the percent corrected that document and is now on the city's website. All that I have to present unless members of council. The pages, it would be the pages were made on.
With the good eye for Gary.
Is Jared, since he's on when he's ready.
Gary, thank you very much for overseeing and this project in particular. The opportunity for them to get the working with something like this is invaluable, and we're very grateful for putting this all together. And I trust that we will the weekly manager report, Jim and Janie, and people who have a question about what the city's doing with their.
I do have one question. Discussing this, I went to the city's homepage. I'm trying to figure out exactly where that published, just for the benefit of the public that I'm having.
Great questions. Under the finance department, there are links there to the popular and the entire audit report budgets.
Okay.
And, in the weekly report, and hopefully on the front page there.
The weekly, and I can situate it in the website.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see.
Mhm.
Sure.
Do a roll call to make sure that everybody is heard.
Absolutely.
And also went to the
last meeting rather. Confirm your attendance verbally. I think you're muted.
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Ayers,
Here.
you're muted there. Mute yourself, Marilyn.
Here.
Ziegler. Here. Mr. Smith, Jim Hallis, and Gary Swink.
Yes, sir.
Anything I missed there, Jared, or does that suffice? You're here, one of the many. Jane, if you can take us back to the, I think the next item is reports of, is that
Are we going to approve them?
correct? Packet, February 20 meeting.
All of
I'll move to present,
Second.
Motion and a hearing none. Roll.
Aye.
Ms. Strong,
aye.
Ms. Alexander,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler abstains. Janie, did we have any citizen mailed or delivered? Thank you, ma'am. Our process at this point, or if somebody had to have the opportunity to speak, correct?
if that's how council chooses to do it, there just need, and I know the notice that went out. So
Very good, thank you. In the media, we welcome citizens' remarks and comment. If they have ideas, budget, we welcome those as well. Nothing for consent agenda, and no unfinished business. To move into boards and commissions and Blue Ridge.
There we go. Blue Ridge Resource fee rates has been posted month, May 11th, I believe.
Very good. Main Street Lexington.
We met virtually working from home, but they're getting a lot of things done to respond to the COVID crisis. It includes Main Street Lexington, Torrey City, and they're let them know what opportunities there are for either. The chamber actually has a really good website with. They're also surveying business on what their funding needs are. Concert tomorrow, April 17th, from 7 to Community Foundation Relief Fund. the funds looking at how it can help businesses as well. So please, local restaurant, and turn on the go to the Facebook to tune in. There's about 9 local musicians that are all going to have fun. And Cornerstone are sponsoring the event. Main Street through the Nationalist program, and a portion employee relief fund. So we'll hear more about that. They're looking at their budget, and we've asked them to eliminate $8,000, eliminating the awning and signs grants, some of the beautification program grants that the remainder of that budget. Stay pilot that we're supposed to have this summer in July is going to, but it's kind of interesting, the shifting, and likely makes to look a lot more attractive to people living in the city. County, we're in a great position because of the Rana years ago, having broadband of our area, it really much more manageable. Remember that our downtown businesses are open. You can call them and either order things on, come in and individually. They are open, and this is the way. So it's not just the restaurants, but even still there. So don't forget about them. And that's all.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions about Main Street Lexington activity?
Well, not a question, but a comment. Former downtown business, and having survived of 2008 in the retail industry downtown, I've been over the current situation that we're dealing with and commiserating and regional business community, and this is something I guess I want to communicate to the Main Street. Currently we're seeing a sense of urgency to help our downtown, but I want everybody forward when we get to summer. That's when we're really going to hit the mares, as I'm concerned. It's going to be so much of urgency to keep on and keep on and keep on. And as we move forward, and as we get closer to that May, we go from Memorial Day into the summer period, a lot of our downtown and regional merchants are the squeeze. So I get that messaging out there through our organization chamber to May deadline. Maintain this level of support. Important than important. The summer is going to be even more important.
I was going to ask,
pass that on.
20,000, did they apply?
I've already applied for it. They haven't heard back from. I don't fully know all the details on the grant, but whether the gift certificate program for businesses with it.
I'm real concerned about what, and I certainly hope they do. But I've been reading that out of this morning.
Well, and this is from Main Street, not from the.
Yes, yeah.
This is from the Main Street program, right? No, well, there is, like I said, there's a component, and that's all I know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's also worth noting, and Main Street Lexington's done a great job of tapping into beautification dollars that we've had, and it goes from our budget for next year. So it'll be one less for Main Street Lexington organization. Please express all thing that Rebecca and Joanne are doing to continue their function of promoting. Clearly, if you've been downtown, business owners are more than glad. I think some of the jewelry stores and others to work shut down. They're just help sustain them, as Chuck pointed out. So, Planning Commission.
We have not met Thursday, and we have quite a few items of business.
Taking advantage of this format ordinance to meet electronically.
Yeah.
This morning virtually, and I covered some of this during our work session, but Ford voted to a discount to or an abate for the next 5 quarters, 20% funds for the the final 2 quarters in fiscal year 21 came up. It was kind of a dispute of Southern Inn. He since going to takeout only are about 20%. He also, Southern Inn normally accounts for about 8% of all. That's pretty interesting. Gene Clark shared some sobering information. Events that have already been canceled through mid-June. The Horse Center expects dollars, and the area will lose the benefit of over have attended those events. And that's all I have tonight.
Thanks for that, Bright.
Better news.
Indeed, it's at this point, and a reminder that working together, we'll be able to survive. Social services, Ms. Hentz.
Yes, the yesterday also virtually also conduct meetings electronically. Clark, the director, reported that many of being from home. I think there are about that are still working in the office, going smoothly. Stances. She also has in past March, or this past month in March, or have 5 adoptions, and that's quite a month. So that was very encouraging. On the meeting call, Baskerville, that firm that we that's conducting surveys for our building, that they gave us an update. We go out. One was called the Big Picture Survey. Went to board members, and then survey, which is a much bigger survey with in about 2 weeks. They want to wrap this in, pull that data together, a very comprehensive RFP. Diana said that they will be sending the 3 localities managers, and then you like your feedback on that survey, possibly share that with. So I guess that'll be up to Jim. We also closed session. And we did closed session voted to take in 1 child from Rockbridge County. And we also finally voted we passed the lease agreement. We agreed that, and that is a 2-year agreement and goes till March 31st for $9,000 a month. And that square footage was asked before, but it's about 14,000, and then that 5,200 additional square footage on the first floor. So that's years with some painting and things like that. So I think that's all I have for the report.
Well, any questions, members of council? Excited to hear about those adoptions and arena. Raro.
Met on Wednesday, April 8th. We met via telephone conference call. Issues of honestly, we had talked about our sports, but then we shared the, but then of course we had to take the canceling our, we had talked about postponing it, trying to have but just given that all of our seasons typically, the school year, the school year, possible to leave that, I think that was fair to families, and so I had to cancel spring. We're sending communication, different forms of refunds or registration fee to certain items, maybe taking care of that tomorrow, today. So very difficult to do that. We're holding that in June or July. We'll be able to have out that we'll have a clinic on a Saturday, or that we can do something.
Thank you, David. Threshold, Ms. Alexander. I do not have any, and I've got nothing for our churches. Our first, the city crews, the creative folks have shown in keeping their businesses open, the resiliency of our community coming together and working hard, refreshing and enlightening. I know you join me in giving praise to all those folks and staying focused on and safe and getting to the other side of this. It was especially poignant for keeping score. Chuck is Hairline, I believe, was done in solidarity for downtown businesses. So Chuck, nice, and good to see your smiling face again. To update you, despite the peers had suggested not meeting, and let's compare notes and talk a little bit hurting with a lot of things they've got going on and significant cuts that got a huge hole in their budget. With Dan Lyons and Spencer and Jay and Jim and through and talk about the circumstance the piece from tourism came from. We'd like to see, ask tourism 20%. We talked about the Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Those are, for the most part, enterprise funds and flexibility there. But with Jim, so those boards, they've squeezed and are bringing their own pens and paper and making things, the future of the library, adds a great deal of support to all of our citizens, reducing, obviously, for 10%. And unfortunately, Buena Vista are proposed to reduce them $35,000. We talked about the fair will be conducted in Glasgow this year, the virus, and can get together more than 10 at a time. One of the other pieces, which I don't know if it's made the news, my names are probably wrong, but I think there are two somewhat fire and EMS, and they're looking to consolidate for the volunteer and the paid one single fire and rescue commission, and probably the first of the fifth. But again, it was to meet with the folks. Sorry, the other piece is that if I remember correctly, it's Buena Vista has completely eliminated any non-contributions. So specifically the Mount Lime Kiln, they would pledge $4,000, I think, state grant, and that was the seed money to put on Mountain Day. Questionable whether or not Mountain Days will be able to happen because that money, from that standpoint. We also, as we had in our Buena Vista and Rockbridge County making any pay increases. Rockbridge, they're looking more at or even eliminating positions more so than raising salaries. And I'll conclude by saying we've got to been, and I'm very grateful for the cooperation, the leadership of the three entities working the best decisions financially. So it's a treat and a privilege on a monthly basis. Unless you'll I want to scoot. I'll bounce past to Jim.
Just had to find my unmute. Anyway, you may recall that on March 19th, we were going to have a presentation from the Washington about changes that were being envisioned, was scheduled. He did not join us, and he will be coming back to us on May 21st to give us some of the changes that are still envisioned in the master plan, Washington Lee. Cities, there's federal legislation that's been sponsored. Aid to smaller communities such as ours could be used to replace some of the revenues that were expenses for COVID-19. Currently, there are those programs that are out there don't provide any kind of aid or that have been lost. So this would be an additional revenue that's being proposed in Washington. Asked me, I did that. So hopefully that'll receive some attention and some assistance in that regard. Recently have been reviewing the intersection of Jackson and White. There has been some changes made by, I believe, a neighbor. That area has a very narrow intersection. And based on what we saw there, the police department would be putting in a three-way stop at that intersection. Very, very poor turn radius and the visibility and sight line. Keep it safe. That's one of the changes we'll be making soon. The department's been busy helping our neighbors with the sun winds. Recently, they were fighting a fire down in Robinson's Gap. Spent the better portion of the day fighting a fire or two fires in those areas. Tirelessly with personnel from our institute to try and identify where we could be losing water the VMI campus. There are some old areas of their plan on abandoning. They had hoped to abandon those. They've been delayed with that work like everybody else has been delayed, so those areas won't be abandoned in July or August. In the meantime, we've had some technology that can go down into the pipes, and actually thus far we've not been successful. We've also of the campus and the different water mains trying to detect flows to also see if we could discover where those leaks. Not been successful, but we are going to continue working. Their personnel has been very helpful, and perhaps we're being billed for water in excess to what we're selling money there, and we want to find out why that's the case. Opportunity for identifying the volumes of water apparently losing, but we've had no success finding that. To receive updates, as I think many of us do, on 19 and federal programs that are there to aid our efforts, and we forward those notifications, changes to our nonprofit agency and others to try and help them for them. And I want to give special thanks to Ty Dickerson, identifying particular programs and benefits for religious organizations, for businesses. I will say, though, a little good news. While most of it some aid, and that was in our Medicare transfer, received $15,764. Ty Dickerson, Pat Delaney, and Gary Swink for applying for that, and we received that small amount of money. We're also, of course, in the midst of this, and we're working hard with Rockbridge County again, local or regional partners, to try and make sure we have complete working with the NAACP chapter, the local chapters, the disadvantaged area, to try and make sure that they also participate in the census. How important it is in all the community that we all count, so everyone does count very dramatically. Recently, I saw something from VPAS, the Services, to notify their partners and the public at assistance available for older citizens. They can provide food assistance, and they can provide for medical care in pharmacies, transportation to medical information, referral, support with chronic issues, and also phone check-ins for those who are. So if somebody out there needs that kind of aid, they can call Lainey Nix at the Maury River Senior Center or County Senior Center. And please, there's other folks out there in the community. The thing that's occurred recently is that our safe routes to school is moving forward. VDOT will provide aid about May 1st, and then those improvements are in front of the school sidewalk. It's safer for children to walk to. Also a sidewalk portion that runs in behind the school, so people will be able to walk to. And another thing we're looking, primary, the season is upon us, so we'll have absentee 24th through June 6th, Monday through 30th. And our city registrar, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you can contact 40462-3706 if you have questions or want to vote absentee. Mentioned I did receive a email this evening about the Baskerville improvements that are perhaps being considered there, and we participate in actually giving some input back into those possible improvements, and I will be counsel either this evening yet or end of my report. You have to unmute.
Thank you for give us some good news.
This is good news. I have no report.
Fantastic.
The city manager, please. Discussing the excusing of interest taxes that were collected March, April, May report. Is that we'll be discussing that next meeting?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for the city manager? For the good of the cause. I'll just echo Leslie's direction of tune in 7 to 9 tomorrow. Order from a local restaurant. Please shop downtown. Mother's Day is just around late to send an Easter present to a friend. Would encourage everyone to. We're all hurting and with businesses shut and barbershops being closed down. Lexington just isn't the same without the buzz of the students. So do your part to help you through this time, and we'll look forward to getting to the others. And to confirm, Jim, Tuesday the 28th, our next Finance Committee meeting?
No, sir, I believe, well, it's a week from got one scheduled.
Oh, right.
We probably are really some information that we get from the state. Proposing is that we meet, schedule an additional meeting.
Okay. Cinco de Mayo. Thank you. We'll target that. So need a plan for the 23rd, but if it's new news from the state, we'll postpone that and reconsider. Very good. Thank you all for and those that phone in to listen and curiosity. Doug, appreciate you being here to experience this virtual meeting with us. And I think they can pick up the Advocate at Kroger's where it can't be delivered like it used to be. So thank you all. Have a great night, and we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.